Welcome back to Munchausen's Proxy, and this is your quick and dirty review of Syfy's The Ark. When last we left the denizens of Ark 1, we had Trust help save the FTL malfunction that was giving time distortions. We had Lane canned as not only the second in command, but completely out of being even a lieutenant. We had Kelly, the survivor from Arc 3, acting fishy, and we had Kat boinking William Trust. Well, this week it got really interesting. And it starts off with Alicia stopping Garnett and Trust from restarting the quote-unquote fixed FTL, because she has realized that Arc 15 is likely waiting for them on Proxima, or at Proxima, because the straight line trajectory between where the Arc 1 was attacked and then where the Arc 3 was attacked leads you straight to Proxima. So after the beginning credits, we have the Council plus William Trust and his wife debating on continuing on to Proxima using a shield Trust says can theoretically be created using the FTL drive, or diverting to the next closest planet, which is Ross 128b, requiring another few years on the Arc 1. Now, Trust is adamant that they continue on, calling them children and basically throwing himself a tantrum when they disagree, and then he locks them out of the ship's computers. Garnett, Bryce, and Felix disagree, not believing the theoretical shield is enough to guarantee the Arc 1 and its crew against the Arc 15. A little bit later, after some other scenes, you have Alicia hack through Trust's lock fairly easily. Before that happens, you have Kelly still making calf eyes at Angus, wrapping the little idiot around her pinky, and Ava being really sure the Ark is not going to hold up for another few years to get to Ross 128. So after they have Alicia cut through Trust's lock, Mr. and Mrs. Trust retreat back to their hibernation chamber room and with Lane, where they basically start plotting a coup against Garnett and the Council. Now, Garnett announces to the crew that because they think Arc 15 is going to be waiting for them at Proxima B, they are going to go and divert to Ross 128B in the hope that Maddox, the woman who took over Trust's company, is basically not in charge of all of the planets that the Earthlings have decided to try and colonize. Now, the crew is not all that happy about this. They really want to get off the damn ship. And so Kat and Lane head to the observation deck and basically start a muttering campaign among the crew, which causes a couple of the more burly guys to go and assault Garnett and Bryce, who fairly easily beat the crap out of them, although Garnett does wind up with a fairly bad cut on her forehead. While that's going on, Kelly's been trying to fix her wrist computer, and she tries to get Angus to fix it, but he's a plant and dirt guy, not a computer guy, and he suggests having an engineer look at it, which eventually she does, and the guy easily fixes it, wondering why she, who is supposed to be part of the engineering crew of Arc 3, can't fix it. And when he gets it working, he realizes it's from Arc 15, and she snaps his neck. Trust is, meanwhile, working on getting Ava on his side. He basically talks to her and tells her that they both know that the Arc 1 is not going to make it to Ross 128. While that's going on, Mrs. Trust is getting Felix's deputy on board by suggesting that he is making emotional decisions instead of thinking rationally. The big blunder that the brain trust of the coup leaders make is sending Lane to talk to Bryce. And Bryce basically tells him he would really like to punch him in the face and go away. So after they've set the groundwork for their little coup, Felix's deputy drugs him in the cafeteria. Ava drugs Bryce after they have a little naked fun time together, and Kat drugs Garnett, although the drug they use only makes her a little woozy, so Kat has an injectable drug that she uses to overcome Garnett's enhanced clone DNA. So after those three are out of the way, they get locked away, and the Trusts and Lane walk onto the bridge and take over, with Mrs. Trust plopping herself down in the captain's chair. And basically, Lane is the bridge officer. They stop the route to Ross 128 and start the recharging of the FTL for Proxima. While that is going on, and they wait for the FTL to be able to start up again, Kat hosts Mrs. Trust, who, while they are having refreshments, catches William Trust arriving for his regular boinking of Kat. And they come up with a story that she does not buy at all. Bryce and Garnett and Felix wake up in helmet storage, and later Trust vents the air to get Alicia to take the lock she put on the computers off. When that's going on, Kat realizes that she's made a mistake in helping those lunatics and goes and confesses to Doc when Doc realizes all of the tranquilizers are gone. And Bryce, meanwhile, is confessing to Garnett that he's basically not going to make it to wherever the hell it is they're going to go, because he has a terminal disease. And they hug it out and the scene changes. Meanwhile, after they vent the air in the helmet storage and they get Alicia to take the locks off the computers, Mrs. Trust, the little psychopath that she is, has decided that they do not need Alicia around anymore and advocate spacing her. Now, Ava is not on board with this at all, and so she goes to the defense of Alicia. And the Trusts are basically about to have the two of them spaced when Garnett, Bryce, Felix, and a couple of others storm onto the bridge, beat the crap out of everybody, and take over again. After this is all over, they have Ava and Yelena, the deputy to Felix, in the conference room to decide what they're going to do with them. And the only reason they're there and not already locked up is because they helped Garnett and Bryce and Felix take over from the Trusts. And just as they're about to let Ava and Yelena speak their defense, they're called to the bridge, because Arc 15 has just shown up. And the final scene in this episode is Kelly, using the gun she stole a couple of episodes ago, going to where they have William Trust and his Confederates locked up, and basically taking him hostage and contacting Arc 15, letting them know that she has him. So what did I think about this episode? Well, there was good and there was bad. The bad. The biggest problem I had with this episode were the scenes with Kelly. She's not a good actress, and I had to look her up because I wondered how the hell she got this part. And found out she is the daughter of Jonathan Glasner, who is one of the writers-producers of this, along with Dean Devlin. She has no other acting credits on IMDb. And quite frankly, I have not liked her since she appeared on Arc 3 as one of the survivors in episode 6. The relationship she is trying to build over the last couple of episodes with Angus was just cloying. I mean, Angus is annoying all by himself. He's not a good actor either, or at least his character is poorly written, if that is how they want him to act. But to add the two of them together, and their scenes are just painful to get through. And quite frankly, there were, one, two, there were at least 3 of them. Maybe 4. I think there were only 3. And those scenes are just absolutely painful to get through. And when you add in Alicia, which has happened over the last few episodes, it gets even more painful. So she was one of the big minuses in this episode. The other big minus is the chick who is playing, what's her first name? Helena, Trust, Mrs. Trust, I call her, she's not a good actress. Add on top of that her character is deliberately written as a psychopath. And you get a character who, yes, she's supposed to be unlikable, but this actress is not a good actress, and so her own unlikability factor outweighs what the writers are intending you to feel towards her. There are characters throughout cinema history and television history that were deliberately written to be unlikable, and actors who pulled it off with mastery to the point where they were given awards for it. This woman is not one of those. And it is a detriment to this episode in particular because she was so prominent in it. I guess the third thing that I didn't like was this whole idea of William Trust's big brain plan for going to Proxima B anyway, even knowing that the Arc 15 would be waiting for them possibly, is this whole idea of a defensive shield using the FTL. Okay, you have the assuming the defensive shield works, which we will later find out it does not. At the end of the episode, when the Arc 15 shows up, the shield goes up for about 3 seconds and then it fails, just as Garnett was worried it would. But let's assume, for the sake of this argument, that William Trust is the genius he thinks he is, and the plan works. You now have an FTL defensive shield, and you have gone to a planet where the Arc 15 is located, the Arc 15 having offensive weapons, and assumingly being crewed by people who work or are loyal to this woman named Maddox, who took over after William Trust was booted. So there you are at Proxima B with a shield and no weapons, and you want to take over a planet that probably has been claimed and settled and defenses worked out for at least a couple of years, because we're assuming that after the FTL is invented, Maddox probably takes over the entire GSA and makes it her own. In the space of time that the people on the Arc 1, 2, and 3 were in hibernation on their way to wherever the hell it was they were going, Maddox's people would have been on Proxima B, setting things up to their own liking, and therefore let's be generous and say the couple hundred of people left on the Arc 1 arrive, then what are they going to do? You have to assume at least half of the 15 arcs that are probably floating around in the universe now are Maddox's people. At least 15. So you now have a planet full of Maddox supporters, and you show up with 200 people and a ship that doesn't have any weapons a ship that is at least a few years behind the technological curve. How in the hell is that plan working out in William Trust's brain? Because in my brain, that equals 200 dead people and a blown up Arc 1. Eventually. Speaking of which, that is a fourth thing I didn't like. I did not like the character transition of William Trust in this episode. The previous episodes, he had been portrayed as a sort of misunderstood genius. This episode, he was infantile. And basically, his wife had her hand up his ass and moving his mouth at various parts in this episode, and it was just a baffling transition between the previous episodes and this one. So that didn't quite work for me. Quite frankly, I think if Garnett and company had the time at the end of this episode, my new plan would be to go to Proxima B and hand whoever's in charge there, Trust, his wife, and Lane, and whoever the hell else the people running Proxima B wanted. Because he's worn out his welcome, and so has his wife. Now, the good thing overall is the overall story arc in this episode was pretty good. And the way it was done, sans the other problems I had with it, was pretty good. The way the Trusts and Lane and Kat maneuvered behind Garnett and Bryce and Felix's back was pretty well done. The way they sort of won over the various important crewmen that they needed was pretty well done. The thing that I think could have been done better, although I don't think it would have worked given her character, is nobody ever tried to get on Alicia's good side, and she was good enough to cut through William Trust's computer lock early in the episode. And that alone should have had somebody cozying up to her and trying to get her on their side. And that didn't happen, to their eventual dismay. She's also the life support officer, so she should have been able to get the oxygen back into the room that they had Garnett, Bryce, and Felix in, and I thought that was a mistake on the writer's part as well. But the overall story arc in this show I liked, and while we still had some backtreading in this episode, the overall show continues to be entertaining, and I'm still hoping it gets a renewal. I still have not seen anywhere that they're going to get more than 11 episodes, unlike the original 12-episode order that was at first requested from the producers of this show. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but the fact that they're only doing 11 when they were originally supposed to do 12, that does not tend to be a good sign. When they start lopping episodes off of seasons for shows, that tends to be a signal that whoever's in charge of scheduling and deciding what shows get axed and what shows don't are rethinking this show, which would be a shame. But it would not be out of character for Syfy. Syfy over the last, decade, maybe more, has had a habit of putting together good shows and axing them way before most of the mainstream channels would. They're kind of like Netflix in that regard, in that shows on Syfy lately have had a very short lifespan. It has been a long time since I've seen shows on Syfy that have lasted more than maybe 3 or 4 seasons, which is a shame because they do come up with some decent shows every now and again. But that's my quick and dirty review of episode 9 of Syfy's The Ark. If you like what I do here, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and comment down below. And I will see you in the next video. Tschüss.